Hello.
Uh, Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon, all. Welcome to the Civil Engineering Society, University of Peradeniya first online talk. The today talk is conducted by Engineer Nandana Abesurya. I would like to welcome Engineer Nandana Abesurya, and I would like to welcome our head, Dr. Uday Disanayaka, and all the staff members and engineers from the industry, and my dear students. When I would like to so today talk is about design and construction of deep basement for Odell Mall at Workplace. As you know, today we have eminent speaker, Engineer Nandana Besurya. He is graduated from University of Peradeniya in 1986, and he has done his masters in 2005 from University of Moratuwa. He's a well known as the president of Society of Structural Engineers in Sri Lanka, and also he is the managing director of NCD Consultant Private Limited. He's a fellow member of Institute of Engineers and fellow members of Society of Structural Engineers and International Professional Engineers and corporate member of Association of Consulting Engineers in Sri Lanka. He has involved in many projects, mainly in Sri Lanka and as well as overseas. When talking about Engineer Nandana Abesurya, he is not new to our faculty, but maybe he is very active in helping the faculty through the Peradeniya Engineering Faculty Alumni Association. He is a founding president of Colombo chapter also. Without taking much time, I would like to invite Engineer Nandana Abesurya to conduct his speech. Thank you. Over to you, sir.
Okay, thank you very much, Dr. Budbika, for your kind introduction, and also in arranging this very useful presentation. Let me do this. There's still give me a few minutes, right? Slide show is not working.
Maybe
Okay. No, that is fine. Okay. Can everyone hear me? Okay, very good afternoon to all of you. I know today the forum is about the undergraduates and also the practicing engineers. So I will mainly focus on the undergraduates, but this is very useful for everyone. So before I go into the topic, I would like to have a little discussion with our students. And please note that this is not a lecture, and I'm not going to ask any questions at the end of the presentation. So you can be relaxed and listen to my speech. And once my presentation is over, if you have any question, you can ask also. So generally, I'm sure now all of you are waiting to complete your degree and then start your career as an engineer. And some of you may do higher studies, and majority will practice as engineers. And out of them, some of you may work as structural engineers, and again, the majority may work as construction engineers and various areas in the civil engineering. So I would like to share some of my experience and also little advice, because now your career, your entire career will be depending on the first job you are doing. I know I have a lot of examples. So you must try to select a good job. When I say good job, so basically it is not the salary but the experience. So this is what we did also when we were just pass out engineer. We were looking for places where you can get a better experience. When you have a better experience, and especially when you get your professional qualifications, then you are free. Then you are free either to continue as an engineer working for some place, or else start your own practice. So when you have the experience and the exposure, I always encourage our engineers to start your own practices, entrepreneurship, because this will help you as well as other engineers. In fact, I graduated from Peradeniya, as Dr. Buddhika explained. Then I joined CECB after working few months as an instructor. And we had a target actually. Our target was to get the charter as soon as possible. So when I went for the charter interviews, they asked my age and asked why you are so hurried to get the charter, because I was very young when I was sitting for the charter. But I had an ambition. I wanted to get the charter to get the full professional qualification, then practice as an independent engineer. So about 20 years back, I started my company, NCD Consultants Private Limited. We started as a very small practice. Actually, I think I always ask our fellow engineers not to start with the big scale, start with a small scale, then you go smoothly, then you are stable. So I also started my company in a small scale. But now we are one of the leading consultants in Sri Lanka. We are working in various other countries like India, Maldives, and even in Oman. So currently we are doing fairly big projects in Maldives as well. And now when you do your final year and during the other years also, I hope you are working on Eurocodes, right? Dr. Buddhika, are you working on Eurocodes or VS Codes?
Eurocodes.
Eurocode, okay, that's great. So, but I am sure our students are having some knowledge about the VS Codes. But I think one thing that you should keep in your mind, that when you go to practice, you may have to work with various codes. So when you work in India, you have to work with Indian codes. If you are working other countries, you have to use Australian codes, then the American codes, UBC, Uniform Building Codes. So I think you have to, you should ready to work with any codes. Codes are only guidelines, and if you are very familiar with one code, you can easily understand and use any of the codes. So we are not now not talking about working in Sri Lanka. Our engineers are ready to go and work abroad, and some of you may work do international projects from Sri Lanka itself. So so it is you have to be adjustable, and you have to always keep updating your knowledge. If you are not updating your knowledge, you will be outdated. This is what I am saying every time. So even at my age, I am still learning, because the moment I feel I can't get it updated, I will have to retire. I can't practice anymore. So I request from all our engineers to update it. Now we are seeking a job, and you are dreaming to become an engineer. Please surf the internet and see what the projects happening in Sri Lanka and outside. What are the major projects? Who are the contractors? Those information are very useful for you when you are going to practice as an engineer. And the project that I'm talking today is Odell. The specialty of this project is this building has 5 basements. And this is the first time in Sri Lanka we are doing building with 5 basements, especially in the middle of a city, because when you say 5 basement, excavation depth is about 17 meters. So you know what you feel 17 meters. Generally, our water table is about 2 meter to maximum 3 meters. So we are going nearly 14 meter, 15 meter below the water table, and we have to excavate. We have to keep the surface dry, and then do our construction. While we are doing that, we have to ensure that adjacent buildings are safe. So this is a challenging opportunity. I must say challenging opportunity for us, because we always like to take challenges as engineers. We are always ready to take challenges, and doing something first time is something is really it's an interesting approach. So when you do something for the first time, our approach is different. If you are doing, we even nowadays you know how we did courseworks. So this is completely different. We don't have samples to follow. So we have to thoroughly study the safety factors, the construction, constructability, cost, the cost factors, and then make the approach. So what we did was, because we have not seen any 5 basement buildings in Sri Lanka, we had to go overseas and see how they are doing. Actually, we went to 2-3 countries where they do this type of deep basement, but we can't do a one-to-one construction here because our conditions are different. The soil conditions are different, then the regulations are different, the equipment available, and everything is different to when you compare with other countries. So, so when we get this opportunity, we did a thorough study on the constructability and the theory part design as well. So my presentation now today, I would like to follow a few steps, others I might miss few things. So before I talk about the hotel construction project, I would like to talk little about the related areas and related topics so that you will understand when I'm talking about the hotel project. So the first item is introduction of basements. The item 2 is deep excavation and earth retaining methods. And then the structural retaining systems. And then the diaphragm wall construction. That is the most important part. Then the bracing and strutting method. Then finally, deep basement design and construction for hotel mall. So introduction of basement. What is basement? Have you seen basements? I'm sure you have been to shopping malls and go to car parking areas. In most of the buildings nowadays, the car parks are placed in the basement. So all of you may have been to basement, but this is nothing new. You can see these pictures, the very old basements. You can see there are 2 pictures showing very old basements. So that basement means the building below the ground. And nowadays, there are a lot of high-rise buildings with basements. Now, this is the world's deepest basement. It says deepest basement in the Sydney Opera House, which is about 37 meters. So when you compare 37 meters against 17 meters, that is our basement. Our one is a small basement, although it is the deepest basement in Sri Lanka. So you know how the technology and the construction happening in outside of this country. So when you talk about basement, the construction of basement is not the difficult thing. Actually, the difficult part is earth retention systems, as you know, before we do any excavations, we have to do a protection of the outside. To protect the outside, we have to do some retaining wall system. Those retaining walls could be temporary, could be permanent. Because when you excavate, you will have in the surrounding property, you may have in buildings, and any slightest movement of the excavation phase can cause settlement to adjacent properties. So it is not a simple approach. So, so therefore, when you talk about deep excavations, there are major considerations. I hope you understand what I'm trying to explain. One is the safety and stability. This safety and stability is especially the surrounding properties as well as people who are working in the basement. I think you may have seen in newspapers that the collapsing of some the shoring systems, retaining walls, and people have died. You know, that is because the retaining wall system provided is not sufficient. So the number one is safety and stability. Stability means it is not a collapse, but stability of a building depends on the slightest movement, slightest settlement. So there are guidelines given what are the maximum allowable settlement and the movements. So when we are designing our retaining wall system, we have to consider all those things. So second one is excavation depth. Generally, if it is a 1 meter, 1.5 meter, we are not very serious unless it is very close to a foundation. But when the depth is more, the approach is different. You can't apply the same technique, same retaining wall system for any depth, because for different depth, you have to use different methods. I will explain in the latter part of this presentation, because the cost factor is also, we have to consider time factor. Everything has to be considered. So we are not using the most expensive retaining wall system for the shallow foundations, shallow excavations. So we have to select what is the best system depending on the depth, and also foam work. When you say foam work, when you are doing a temporary excavation, we have to temporarily support the earth. So the foam work is, there are various type of foam works we are going to discuss, and strutting method. Now when we are excavating with certain type of retaining wall system, we can't design a system which is freestanding like a cantilever, because that is very expensive. So what we do in the normal practice, as and when we advance our excavation, we do a lateral bracing. We provide lateral support. So when you excavate a few meters, we can again provide lateral support and go down. If you have seen some mining sites, you may have seen they provide supports and go down. Then also the speed of construction. Now when you do basement, suppose it is a large basement and a lot of earth has to be taken out. So when you are taking earth, you can't freely move the equipments like the excavators inside the basement, because you have lateral supports. So speed of construction depending on the space availability. So this is also something that you have to take serious, because finally in any construction, completion is something very serious. So now, because if you complete a building only, you can start operations, business operations. So there's a value for every day that the project delays. So speed of construction, sometimes at a cost we have to use. Then the accuracy. Accuracy is also paramount important, because when you are excavating, if it is a vertical surface, it has to be vertical. If it is not vertical, and sometimes you are going into somebody else's properties, or else you are giving additional risk. Then also the site limitations. Suppose you have a narrow site, if you are taking 2 meters for the shoring system or a temporary support system, you are losing large area. So whatever the supporting system that we are selecting must use the minimum space. So these are something that we have to think. Then the material use. whether you are using concrete or the steel or different timber, whatever, we have to select what the material we are using. And then soil type. The total retaining wall or rather temporary supporting systems or even the permanent system depending on the soil type. And these soil types vary from country to country. So for example, if you go to Singapore, you get marine clay. And if you go to countries like India, you don't find the bedrock even at 50 meters. So if you are thinking a supporting system which is resting on rock, which is not possible in India, even in Singapore the situation is same. So India, you have to think about a system which is sitting on soil, because the rock is very deep. And even in countries like Middle East, you have a sandy soil. So soil type is giving a lot of factors to consider when you are designing retaining wall systems. Then the construction excavation methodology. This means the sequence of construction. You have to follow a sequence, because the same sequence should be considered in the design as well as in the construction. If you design for certain sequence and you follow a different sequence, there will be a risk. And then also the water tightness. In whatever the system that you are using, the water tightness has to be there. So we are going to discuss about the retaining wall system. So the different system having different level of water tightness. So depending on the water table and the seriousness of the location, we have to design a system. And then finally the cost. So all these factors should be considered when you are going to design or rather select a system. This picture shows a simple example how the excavation will be done. So you will see some, you can see on the left corner the groundwater table, and there is an adjacent structure. On the right hand side, the vehicles are going there. So this could be a road. So there is a surcharge. So always surcharge load has to be considered. Then there are pipelines. There could be pipelines. And also H is the depth of excavation. So our whatever the shoring system should go below the excavation level. And when we are, these are the struts. So lateral struts are controlling the movement of the temporary wall system. So always we learn from failures. So this is Nicol Highway in Singapore. You can see the scale of the damage. And on the right hand side, so entire fountain has got exposed because of the failure of the retaining wall system. So this building has built on the field area. So when the retaining wall fails, so this is what happened. And after the Nicol Highway failure, Singapore has set up certain requirements. Actually, in Sri Lanka, we have not gone this into our regulation. I have pushed several times, but it has not happened yet. We are still trying to get all these minimum requirements established. If I explain, now in Singapore, all permanent or temporary building works that involve excavation depth 1.5 meter deep. So if your excavation depth is less than 1.5 meters, that is about 5 feet, there is no issue getting the plan approval. If the excavation depth is between 1.5 meter and 4 meter, qualified person should design the temporary supporting system. Qualified structural engineer should design, but accredited check is not need not to check it because it is only 4 meter. But if it is from 4 meter to 6 meter, qualified person should design. They should submit a design report with the support system that is going to plan, and then you have to analyze and see what the deformation, then the I will discuss later, but the stability of the system, and this should be checked by accredited checker. That is to make sure that they know, even if the qualified person has made a mistake, it will be checked. So we are going to keep a zero tolerance for mistakes. And then the procedure is same, but when the excavation depth is more than 6 meters, you have to get a qualified geotechnical engineer also involved. But in Sri Lanka, in any of the steps, we are getting the service of a geotechnical engineer. And also there is a guideline with respect to the distance from the excavation phase to the nearest building. There are 3 zones. X is the distance from the excavation phase to the building, and H is the depth of excavation. So if X divided by H is less than 1, that means the failure plane is more than 45 degrees. Wall deflection should be 0.5%. So imagine what the 0.5%. That is the deflection over H is 0.5%. I hope if you carefully see this chart, you will understand these values. So suppose your depth of excavation is 3 meters and your building is at 4 meter distance. So it falls into the first zone. And that in whatever the system that you provide, the deformation, because when you provide a temporary supporting system and then do excavation, when you do excavation, there will be some deformation. Can you design a beam with zero deflection? You can't. So like that, even in the earth supporting system, we have some deflection. So that deflection divided by the depth of excavation should be less than 0.5%. So you can see when the buildings are getting closer, this limit is increasing. Okay, then I will go into structural retaining systems. This is a typical gravity retaining wall. The forces applied on the gravity retaining wall, I think you have done under geotechnical engineering. You get active pressure from the earth fill, then you get a pressure resistance from the excavated face. You have the weight of the wall, and then you have a bearing force. So this whole weight, the bearing capacity of the soil should be more than the total weight of the wall. And there will be the lateral force created by this different earth pressure should be resisted by the sliding resistance. So friction, the friction under the underside of the retaining wall should be more than the lateral force. So these are the basic things. If it is a cantilever wall, again on the backfill side, you should have enough earth to provide the resisting moment. So the soil is giving, while giving lateral force, it is giving it is controlling the movement. Gabion wall is a flexible system. This is ideal where your ground is not very hard, and it is a perfect arrangement for draining water. So you don't want to provide weep holes because the water pressure, there is no water pressure building up on this gabion wall. Because water pressure, if you are designing a retaining wall for earth pressure and water pressure, it's going to be much bigger than you are designing only for earth pressure. So we always try to keep the water pressure reduced by providing weep holes. So when you go for a gabion wall, there is no water pressure building up in the backfill. So this is, I think most of you have seen this type of excavation, but when you do one single basement or even 2 basement, you call soldier piles. So you are having soldiers actually steel sections. And first you drive the steel section, then as I when you excavate, you drive these timber leggings. So this is a very simple, very common practice in Sri Lanka. And there's a thing called shotcrete wall. This shotcrete wall is also called spray concrete. You provide a mesh and then concrete. So once it is concreted, the spray concrete become very hard and become like a concrete wall. Other one is a touch pile. So this is the third system, touch pile, or we call it micro pile. What you do is you drive pile. You are not driving, actually you bore it and concrete small diameter pile. Generally it's about 200 to 400 in the range. We are having in Sri Lanka the machines for 300 millimeter, very fast driving, fast boring machines. So if your basement depth is about 3 meter, 4 meter, we can use this meter, this tangent pile or touch pile. You are first bore and place this pile, then the next you keep space for another pile, then do this, then again you can do this. Or else you can do touching, because we're not going to do touch piles. If you can follow the same sequence, you have to wait. Because if you do this pile today, you can't do this tomorrow. So ideally you do the next one and then come back to this. So that is the arrangement when you do with the touch pile or micro piles. Otherwise, interlocking sheet piles. So I'm sure you have seen this sheet piles, interlocking sheet piles, which is a very good watertight system. And end of the construction, you can remove, you can reuse. So that is the advantage. So especially for temporary work, you can use sheet piles. And the other one is a little more advanced system called secant pile. Secant pile is also kind of a concrete board pile, but the difference is first you cast the primary pile. What you show without the reinforcement is the primary pile. Generally, the diameter of these piles are about 680 millimeter. So first you cast primary piles without reinforcement. After that, you are cutting. When you are boring, you are cutting part of the primary pile and then cast the secondary pile with the reinforcement. So it is obvious that the reinforcement provided for this secondary pile must cover from this point to this point. Can you see my cursor? Dr. Budmekar, can you see the cursor?
Yes.
Okay. So from this point to this point area, the total pressure, earth pressure should be designed to take by this secondary pile. This is a good system. Only thing, it is a time consuming. And then diaphragm walls. Actually, diaphragm wall is also like a board pile. If you just think about the diaphragm wall, if you have not heard about diaphragm wall before, it is just like a casting a normal pile. Only thing, it is a wall. At once we are casting complete wall to 3 to 5 meter long wall up to the hard rock. Suppose your hard rock is at 25 meter or 30 meter, at once you are concrete the whole wall about 3 to 5 meter long, but to a depth of 30 meters. And you have to first excavate like you excavate for a wall up to the hard strata, that is to rock, and then you lower the reinforcement cage, then you concrete. So imagine if you can concrete a wall to 3 to 5 meter a day, this is one day operation. You can't concrete, do the excavation today and then come tomorrow, day after, and concrete it. If you start in the morning, you have to complete the whole thing. So the advantage of this diaphragm wall is, which is very fast and also cost effective. If you compare the cost of diaphragm wall against cost of secant piles, diaphragm walls are cheaper. And you are getting a perfect finish as well. And the progress is very good because every day you can concrete about 3 to 5 meters. So now we are going to talk about diaphragm wall construction because for deep buildings, deep excavation, when you have deep basement, you don't have any other option. This is the most popular option in all over the world, that is going for diaphragm wall construction. So when you talk about diaphragm wall construction, there are a few jargons you call diaphragm wall, you call it D wall. Then when you cast, let's say 5 meter, suppose the total length of your basement excavation perimeter, you are basically doing the diaphragm wall along the perimeter. And the beauty of this diaphragm wall is the thickness is about 600 millimeter. Generally for 5 basement, 6 basement, 600 millimeter thick diaphragm wall is sufficient. And the total space you require from the boundary is 1 meter. So especially for a narrow sites, diaphragm wall is ideal because you are only using 1 meter. Within 1 meter you are having the diaphragm wall, and the other advantage, the diaphragm wall itself is the permanent wall. You don't want any other wall. You can have a skin wall, but the diaphragm wall is a structural permanent wall, permanent retaining wall of the building. So you are saving a lot of space when you are going for diaphragm wall. So some of the trench wall, I will explain. Straddle wall, camshell excavator, guide wall, stop end, and cut-off wall. So when you cast the diaphragm wall, so at the two ends of the diaphragm wall, you have to provide stop end, because you have to provide a water bar. So today you concrete 5 meter. If you are going to concrete the next 5 meter tomorrow, there is a great chance of water leaking through the construction joint, because if there is you can't have a connectivity. Therefore, we are inserting a water bar. So the two walls are connected to the water bar, so there is no water leaking. This water bar connection is done with the stop end. That is a steel section. We are inserting the water bar to one side and then lower it. Later you can remove once you remove the stop end for the next day concreting, the water bar is going into the next wall. So I just try to explain guide wall. Now, this is called camshell excavator. So you need a crane. You need a crane to lower the reinforcement cage. You can lower the whole cage, or if it is very big, you can do in pieces, or you can use 2 cranes. Remember now, if the depth of your diaphragm wall, the depth of rock is 25 meter, because in Sri Lanka, in Colombo, in most of the area, you find the bedrock at 25 meter, you have to prepare a reinforcement cage 25 meter long. So when you have 25 meter long cage, you need a fairly big, good crane to handle. So if I just quickly go through the feasibility or the advantages, formwork guide wall at ground level to ensure initial alignment. So when you are using the camshell and excavate it, we have to make sure that you are going along the exact theoretical line. So for that, before you do the diaphragm wall, we have to cast a guide wall, concrete guide wall. So the machine is going, the camshell is going in between this is like a trench, bottomless trench. So it's like a bottomless trench. So you can position the camshell and excavate it so that the movement will be less than 10-15 millimeter, because the guide wall we are giving about 10 millimeter gap. And then the speed of construction, as I said earlier, is about 3 to 5 meter. Accuracy is 2%. So we can work within 2% accurate. And materials less concrete, because secant pile, as I said, is about, it goes about 800 millimeter. And you need more concrete. And soil type, more suitable for stable soil profiles. Water tightness, because you are getting joint only about 5 meter. If you go for secant pile, every 800 millimeter you have a joint. So when you have more joint, you have more problem. When you have less joint, we have less problem. So generally what you do is you first cast the guide wall around the perimeter of the proposed basement area. And then, now when you are designing the diaphragm wall, you can't design a diaphragm wall standing 15-20 meter depth. We can design maximum 4 to 5 meter or even 3 meter, assuming that there are lateral supports at every 3 meter or 4 meter. Then only the diaphragm wall or whatever the system is economical. I will do a small video clip which shows how the diaphragm wall construction is done. This is a diagrammatical presentation. This is the guide wall. So you can see the guide wall here. Then the cam shell is lowering, they take the earth. So it is put into the truck. So you are going through the loose soil. This is exactly the cam shell. So you excavate. With the cam shell, you can't excavate 5 meters at once. It can excavate about 2 meters with the size. So you have to do this operation. You have to lower it a couple of times to get the required width, or rather length of the diaphragm wall. Now we are, and remember this is like piling. So you have to provide bentonite slurry during the excavation process to keep the site stable. Then you are lowering the reinforcement cage, then you concrete it. So this is how you basically construct a diaphragm wall. So you can see the guide walls are still remaining, and this is the stop pen. As I said, stop pen has to be removed when you do the next one. So starting methods, you can do steel struts. Now this first set of struts, you excavate about 1 meter. We have to design actually. We can't simply excavate 1 meter. In the design process, you assume that after excavating 1 meter, you have a lateral bracing system. Then after excavating another 3 meters, you have to fix a second set of lateral bracings. These are advanced systems where you can use pre-stress hydraulic struts. So if there's a movement, suppose there's a movement, you can pre-stress and get back to the safest line. And if you don't use lateral bracings, you can do soil anchoring. But you are doing soil anchoring in somebody else's properties, so you have to get the permission. If you are having buildings close by, you don't get permission to do the soil anchoring. But if you do this ground anchoring, your space is free to do excavation. You can do very fast construction because you don't have lateral bracings. Now we were talking about steel bracings. The latest approach is to go for concrete bracings. So at Total project we use concrete bracings. The advantage of concrete bracing is you can design the concrete bracings so that you get a pressure ring. You can get because concrete is good for compression, you can design the system so that the beams are under compression, and then you get a void at the center so that you can do excavation very easily. So you have a wonderful space for excavation. So that is the advantage using concrete bracings. And concrete, somebody may argue that if you use steel bracing, steel is reusable, but concrete cannot be reused. But when you do the real construction, you have to cut and remove all this concrete in pieces. That can be reused. Actually, in Nodal project, we crush it and use for construction of cement blocks. This is actually we are doing 2 buildings with 5 basements. This is for silex or LT, Lanka transformers. So there we are using steel bracing. You can see the steel bracing because the depth is narrow. Here also you can see you have a lot of buildings around the excavation area. This is at Darbal Mahata. We are still again with steel we are providing some well for excavation with steel support which will be under compression again. You have 2 wells. So this is another picture of the bracing. You can see bracings at every 3 meters in this silex project. Okay, now we are going to talk about our main topic, that is deep basement design and construction for hotel mall. The difference or the challenge of hotel mall is the area is very large. You can see from this picture, this is town hall. You can see the clock tower here, CWW Kannangara Mawata. This is where the Town hall is somewhere here. This is the town hall. The town hall, this is CWW Kannagaramata. This is Ward Place. So the present total is in bordering the Ward Place and CWW Kannagaramata. So that is exactly here. And this is the present total. What is shown in the blue color is the proposed building. So this part is phase 2, which this has only 1 basement. And this is the building which is having 5 basements. This is a section drawing. So the total depth of excavation is about 70 meter, and we have our basement at 15 meter. The last basement is at 15 meter, and you have the superstructure. This, of course, I borrow from an article written by engineer Senrat Bandara from Access to illustrate very easily this whole process. So you can see now this is a picture showing the situation after completion of the excavation. So what is shown here is the diaphragm wall, and this is the excavation. But what he has not shown is the bracings. So you have to imagine that there are bracings. So and another challenge that we had to face was that Odell did not want to sacrifice their parking, because the customers is number 1, the construction is number 2. So they told us very specifically 50% of the area should be available anytime for their parking. So imagine you are going to do a 5 basement building, but anytime you have to give 50% of the area for parking. How do you do that? So we decided we go for phase 2 zones, not phase but 2 zone. First of all, you complete the diaphragm wall. Then you have piles. This building is sitting on piles. In addition to the load-bearing pile, we had to do another piles to support some steel king post. Steel king posts, I think you may have heard, king posts are there to support again temporary work. So in our lateral basin system, although the lateral basin system is concrete, we have given vertical support with steel king posts, and we have done a suspender slab at ground level sitting on the king post to support for the car parking. So while the vehicles are parked here, we do the excavation underneath, and we finish the excavation. We finish completion of all the basement, and when we come to ground level only, we remove this. So while we are giving parking, we use this area for excavation. Then once that is done, then you into this side. So you are using, then you excavate and you remove slab and do the construction. So this is another artistic, I think, view of how it is going to be during construction phase. Okay. All of you are civil engineers, and I know you are very good in geotechnical engineering. Now, in the basement construction, the 90% of our job is designing the diaphragm wall, because designing of building with concrete floors for car park or what is not a challenging thing. It is a standard design procedure, but designing of the diaphragm wall while ensuring all the limitations are met, serviceability limits are met, is a challenge. So we have to do a thorough study of the soil, and this is we have to do a finite element model. We use Plexis, the software. You have to model the whole, not only the excavation depth. You have to go further down up to the rock level. You have to model. You call soil interaction. So then you have to analyze and then design. So we did boreholes. We did borehole representing all the entire site. You can see BH1 to BH6 in the area. And then as you know, the borehole results are not identical. Remember, borehole results are not identical. If you see from borehole 1 to borehole here 4, it goes up to 6. At different depth, layer arrangement is somewhat different, but not a major difference. You get from loose sand. When you have plastic organic clay somewhere on the other borehole, you get medium dense sand. But when you are designing a diaphragm wall, you can design various type of diaphragm walls. You have to design one diaphragm wall which is suitable for every part of the site. So we have to see the most the best representation out of all these boreholes to select for the diaphragm wall design. So we have taken the best representation. Now these are the soil property that you require. So if you are planning to design a diaphragm wall, you should ask the soil investigation party to take all these tests. You can see we are using, actually we have modeled with a Moore-Coulomb model, and if it is it could be drained soil or undrained soil, we have to see whether it is drained soil or undrained soil. Then you should calculate the unsaturated unit weight, saturated unit weight, permeability in the horizontal direction, permeability in the vertical direction. Because remember, now we are excavating almost 17 meters and we are excavating nearly 15 meters below the water table. So there is a chance that water could come from, because you are, when you are excavating, you are creating a big water pressure. And when you have 50-meter water pressure, what is the water pressure? How many bars? It's about 1.5 bars. So you know 1.5 bars. So the permeability is controlling the seepage. So we have to get more accurate information on the vertical and horizontal direction permeability. Then the Young's modulus is required. Cohesion ratio, coefficient of cohesion is required. Then the friction angle, relentlessly angle is required. Then the strength reduction factors. These are actually, you don't find all the information in the soil industrial report. We have to do little literature review to find certain other factors. And remember now the design process analysis. Now, as I said, we have to do a model. You have to do model for we have to do various models. So in the model, we have to apply various conditions. One is, now if I just explain the stage construction, this is one good example where construction is seriously considered in the design process. In most of the normal cases, we design and we are the contractor to construct. But here, we have to seriously consider the design sequence, construction sequence, and follow it in the design process, and then make sure that the same sequence is followed by the contractor. So what we do is, first we assume we excavate 3 meters. Sorry, we can excavate 4 meters because this diaphragm wall is so strong that it can act as a free cantilever while keeping the deformation and other limits within the limit. You can excavate 4 meters without any supports. So once the 4 meter is done, so we are doing first analysis for excavating 4 meters. Then what you do is you provide the support at 0 level, then excavate about again another 4 meters, that is about 8 meters. So, so you excavate 4 meters, then you provide the support at the ground level, then you excavate 8 meters, then you provide the, so next one will be providing support at 4 meter level. Then you excavate another 4 meters, then provide the next support. So like that you excavate always 3 meters or 4 meters, then provide a support. And so that is up to the bottom level of excavation. So all these sequences should be modeled, because each case you have different bending moment, different shear forces, different deformation patterns. And then construction, you have to consider you complete the first basement, but still the supports are there. Then you go to the next level, you remove the first support, then construct the basement 4. Then you remove the next support. So there are 2 cases. The moment you do the basement 4 is one condition. Once you remove the support is another condition. Obviously, the second case is more critical. So like that, again, the construction sequence should also be modeled. And all these load cases, we have to run and see how the deformation of the diaphragm. Now what is shown in the blue color is the diaphragm wall. I think I may have to take a little extra time. Dr. Budnik, is it okay?
Yes, yes. Please go
Okay.
ahead.
So now this is, yeah, so you have modeled the soil, and these are the supports, the lateral supports. So all these cases we model it, and we are getting the reactions. We are getting the reactions at every support, because there are two things. One is the designing of the diaphragm wall. So we have the reinforcement design, shear, everything we have to check for the diaphragm wall. For that, we must know the bending moment and the shear, and the deformation is a safety check. And again, now we are providing lateral supports. We must know how much of load is applying on the lateral support. So if you talk about the first level of support, the total compression apply on the first support vary at different sequences. So we have recorded the reactions at each struts, and we have to get the maximum value, because at one stage, now if you take this temporary support 1, that is at the first level, you can see there is a 66 kilonewton. You can see at stage 5 you are getting 66 kilonewton. So after it is going less, but still you have designed the lateral support system for 66. The second lateral support, we are not doing this typical supporting system for all the levels. Second level, you should see, which is having 102 kilonewton at stage 6. So and then again 114 at stage 18 and 19. So we have to design for 114 kilonewton. So like that, all the levels you have to design for, you have to get the maximum value. Again, you are checking for construction also. So we are getting the maximum values and design. So these are the displacement, this is envelope, and this is envelope for bending moment. These are shear force and axial force. So we need the axial force, shear force, and bending moment, like you design a concrete wall, and then design the diaphragm wall. So this is a guide wall I explained earlier. This guide wall should also be designed, and this guide wall has to be cast first, because this is in between the two walls. Only the diaphragm wall will be excavated, and this is a diaphragm wall section, a typical section. And remember now, the diaphragm wall is going to be a permanent structure, permanent retaining wall. So outside face you have water. So you have design, you have to check for crack width as well. So because it is water retaining, you have designed like a water retaining structure. Generally, you know, for normal design, your crack width you can limit, so you can keep it go up to 0.3 millimeter. But for the diaphragm wall is acting as a retaining wall, so you have to design for 0.2 millimeter external face crack width. And also we have to think of consider thermal cracking and shrinkage, and you are designed for the ultimate limit states. This is the guide wall. So casting of guide wall, and you can see the reinforcement cage. This is you need some sufficient area to fabricate the complete cage. Can all of you see this reinforcement cage? So this is for one diaphragm wall. So there are two cages. Okay, and I'll show you a little practical excavation of the diaphragm wall at Odell site. Okay. So when we design the diaphragm wall, you take certain safety precautions and consideration, and in doing the construction, we have to monitor. We have to monitor and make sure that those deformations are within the limit. So we have certain tools. So one is the inclinometer reading. Inclinometer is to make sure that the diaphragm wall is done within the vertical surface, and also actually the verticality of the diaphragm wall is done during the excavation and excavation from the camshell itself. But when you do the excavation, whether the diaphragm wall is moving or not is measured from the inclinometer reading. We have to regularly take the readings and see with respect to the first reading whether it is moving. This has to be done at every 1 meter during the depth. So we have to insert these pipes during the construction for inclinometer reading. And then you get axial load sensors, that is to check the axial load, and survey point of diaphragm wall. In addition to that, we have a lot of survey points that we check regularly for to check whether the movements. Then lateral displacement of soil outside the wall also we are monitoring, and also surface subsidence outside the wall, because we have to check the then we have to check the groundwater table, because now when we are excavating, we have to dewater the water within the basement area, and that should not cause lowering of the groundwater table outside. So we are having wells outside, closely monitoring whether the groundwater table is varying, because as you know, if there are buildings, especially on shallow foundations, the building can settle if the groundwater table goes down. So we are checking the groundwater table outside. So you can see this is the Odell side. Now these are the two openings we made in the concrete slab for excavation purpose. You can see a lot of monitoring points are there. And these are the inclinometer readings. So at the bottom level it is always 0. And this is the concrete lateral bases. These concrete lateral bases are done as and when you do excavation. So you first cut the trenches, cast the reinforcement, and then concrete. So somebody might think, how we do huge concrete beams, like still of course you go and fix it. But how do you concrete beams? It is very simple. You cut a trench, cast the beams, and then you excavate. You concrete and excavate. So these are the completed, you can see these concrete beams. While we are coming up, these beams we have to cut it and remove. So this is the diaphragm wall. Once it is excavated, this is how you see the diaphragm wall. Now this is the ramp area we are now coming up. This is Odell building with the, this is where the opening is. And now this is, I suppose this is at basement 3 level. You can see the basement construction is now going up. So this is the ready for, this is a formwork. These are the concrete beams. You can see these concrete beams are sitting on steel columns. These are called king posts. You can see these are called king posts. And so that is all about my presentation. So good practice need to be developed and introduced to our country, our industry, because we have to use our model. The technology is there. We should develop to suit with our country. And always you have to take challenges to develop this country, and all our civil engineers, I think some of you are practicing engineers, some are students. We have to play a major role as engineers. And remember, I always encourage people to start your own practices. Entrepreneurship is the one that should be taught in the universities. Entrepreneurship should be a subject actually. Because then otherwise you don't go, once you are passing out, you don't go and do strikes asking jobs. If you are ready for entrepreneurship, don't think that only rich people or people having contacts can do practices. When I came to Colombo 20 years back, I didn't have any contact. I had some relations, friends, but they are not rich or they are not influential. So I started working with the people and built up the contacts. So becoming a consultant or becoming a contractor is not a difficult thing. You have to, only thing you have to determine to do that. So I'm sure I wish all of you also will be getting something to do for the first time in Sri Lanka. Not definitely a base fund because I have already done it, but there are many things that you can do for the first time, and please be prepared for that. Thank you very much. Thank you, Dr. Bhutmika, for arranging this session. You can ask questions if you are having any questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Engineer Nandana Abesuya,
Yeah.
for the your valuable speech. And as we can see, we have more than 100 participants today.
Oh, great. Okay.
You can see he is very well equipped with knowledge in the industry. So I think it's a good forum you to ask questions. So I think first I will give a chance to participants to clarify the doubts that they have.
Yeah. Okay.
So you can unmute and talk to Engineer Nandana Abesuya, direct any question.
Okay. Okay.
Hello.
Thank you very much for a nice presentation.
Thank
yeah,
you.
sir,
Yeah.
can you hear me, sir?
Yeah, I can hear you.
Yes,
sure.
yes.
Yeah. Please go ahead.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. This, you know, the undergraduate students.
Sorry, I think.
Retaining all subject. And is yeah.
Sorry,
Dr.
there is a
Nawa,
lot of disturbance. Yeah.
Whatever
Yeah.
you explain is like.
Voice is not clear. Can you repeat the question?
This breaking actually. This lot of.
Let me put a microphone. Can you hear now?
Yeah. Okay. Go ahead.
Yeah. Yeah. Thank you very much. You know, I have a question. This, you know, the instrumentation part for, you know, construction monitoring.
Yeah.
Is that the contractor do this construction monitoring, or you give it to somebody else, kind of an independent monitoring system, or you know, how that works in Sri Lanka? That is my first question. And I also wanted to know, like, is there anything that you observed during this construction project? Is anything observed in the, you know, the nearby building or nearby roads? Is there any ground subsidence you monitor during this construction?
The number one, actually, always this monitoring is done by an independent party, like the inclinometer and all the laboratories are assigned to do that. And the survey is also done by independent survey. And actually now we closely monitor now when the movements of the one, we check against the theoretical one. We check, because we also have a lot of interest on this, we always check the theoretical value against the actual one. It was pretty much close, but at no situation it exceeded the theoretical value. So it came almost same actually in some occasions. So that is number one. Number two, yes, actually there were some problems because these are not design problems, but there are a couple of places where due to weak concreting at 11 meter level, the water came, suddenly water came with sand. So when you are concreting also, you have a lot of standard we follow. Like, you know, we even monitor the theoretical volume against the actual volume to make sure that there are no bulging or necking. But still, there was a couple of places, I think we found the reason actually there was a water stream that the pressurized system has gone through the diaphragm wall before the concretes get hard. Through that we got water, but we were ready. We were ready with steel plates to seal it. But within a few seconds, you get about 10, 15, even 20 meter cubes of sand. So we had to grout it actually. The adjacent property had to grout it. So we noticed certain settlement. We had to grout it. But no problem happened due to any movements. Our lateral bracing system and the diaphragm wall was perfectly working as designed. Okay, any other questions?
Thank you. Yeah, thank you very much. I have another question also.
Okay.
Like when you say this, construction dewatering, and you say that whenever the water table level goes down, then that will create problem to the nearby building foundations. When you make like a dewatering, it makes like a conical shape. Like if you go like 13 or 15 meter down, and there will be like a reduction of a groundwater table to the nearby structure. So when you design this one, for the Plaxis model, do you put together that nearby building foundations also and
No, actually,
something like that, or?
No, now when we are designing the Plaxis model, we consider loads of the nearby buildings. Definitely, we have to consider loads and also the surcharge from vehicles. But remember, now this diaphragm wall, we are excavating up to the hard strata. That is, we are going through the weathered rock also. So when you go through when we are going through the weathered rock and when you concrete, there is no hardly any chance for water to seep. You can see in our basements, when this is excavated, there is no water inside. The seepage is almost, nothing, because we have a very good sealing. The seepage, because the concreting is done up to weather rock, and the chances are very rare for the water to seep under the diaphragm wall, unless it is coming through some construction joint. There is no chance. But eventually, now after over a long period of time, slowly the water pressure can build up, not immediately. So there was no the dewatering. What I meant, now when you accept in 3 meter, you have to remove 3 meter of water. That water has to be removed, but not the water which is seeping.
Okay.
Okay.
Okay, yeah, yes, I got it. Like, I mean, since you are, all the way to the bedrock, you are putting this diaphragm wall, so the seepage chances are very less.
Yeah,
Thank you very much, sir.
We consider, in the Plaxis model, we consider all those water table and seepage, everything. Yeah, thank you. Any other questions?
Thank you, Dr. Nawa. And we have another question through our chat.
Yeah.
Sudarshan Balasubramaniam. So he asks, why you use concrete stuff instead of steel in this project particularly?
Yeah, that's a very interesting question, because every time we use steel, but the concrete, these concrete struts are nearly 1 meter by 1.5 meter, huge beams. But the concrete strut can, the biggest advantage, the space between two struts is nearly 4.5 meters. Earlier we designed steel struts at 3 meter levels, but the contractor proposed concrete struts at 4.5 meter levels, because you can easily move your machines. Because in the 3 meter you can't use a heavy machines. So the excavation was very fast. Well, I compare the excavation rate of this building with Silex building, where we use steel struts at 3 meter. Here the excavation is very fast. That is the biggest advantage. And cost-wise also, concrete struts are not expensive. According to the contract, it is cheaper.
Yes, I hope it answers his question. If you have more question, yes. I have another question from, yes, name as HS. What was the construction time? So
construction time means the excavation time and then the construction of basements. Actually, now we are at the basement 1 level. We have excavated and we have completed basement 5, 4, 3, 2, and we are at basement 1 level. The excavation, the diaphragm wall construction took about, because remember, we are doing while giving priority for hotel car parking. So, and in April and December, you can't work because you want the whole area. I could not mention in April and December season, you have to stop work, give the entire site for parking. So with all these difficulties, we managed to complete the excavation within 6 months.
I think, yes, is a question. We have another question from, and the same person asked the question about the construction cost. Can you give
construction
a rough,
cost actually,
idea
the total cost is about 7 billion.
7 billion.
Yeah, 7 billion, the total construction cost.
We have another question from Dr. Deepthi Udakara. At what depth the kin posts are fixed? So
King posts are also done up to the hard rock because you have to do a pile. You have to do a larger diameter pile, about 1.2 meter pile up to the hard rock. We went for 1 meter socketing also, and then you insert the king post into that.
Right. I had a question when I was watching your presentation. Now, so when once you finish this diaphragm wall, you have to start building your own the real building. Now, when you build, then you have to remove these diaphragm walls. The bracings, so that the effects should be taken care by the maybe the structural system or the slabs maybe. So how do you so you have how do you back calculate the loads and apply it when you design the slabs? Because slabs we normally don't design for lateral, but here are you considering the lateral effects through the slab?
Yeah, definitely. I think you saw the last basement level, it was about 210 kilonewton. This 210 kilonewton is taken by 1 meter thick raft. So other levels, it was about 115. So you just calculate 115 kilonewton divided by, let's say, suppose the slab thickness is about, you forget about the beams. We have put in the model, but even if you take a simple beam of 150 thick, 150 millimeter into, let's say, 1 meter into a concrete grade, it has a huge capacity.
Okay.
Now we did not want to provide any extra reinforcement for compression because the nominal what we designed for normal condition was sufficient.
In there, then do you have a connection between the diaphragm wall and the slab, or is there because now the diaphragm wall is already constructed? And you don't have in provision to insert reinforcement. Do you have provision to insert reinforcement at the slab level, or how do you connect it with the slabs and the existing wall? You connect it or just keep it?
No, actually, there are certain places in other countries they use the diaphragm wall itself to support the slab also. But in our case, diaphragm wall is totally acting as a retaining wall, and we have our independent structure. We have a waterproofing and then our structure, but we had a skin wall. The skin wall is 200 thick to 300 thick. In one project, it was 150 millimeter. Silex project, the skin wall is 150 millimeter. Here we use 300 millimeter one. But that wall, we have a separation actually. Separation in the sense we are casting the skin wall against the diaphragm wall after doing the waterproofing.
Okay, right. And we have another question by Dr. Jaila Tedirsingha. So when underground facilities are planned, one of the challenges is the information about existing facilities, underground facilities. Is there any database of underground facilities in Colombo? Anybody can
actually, yes, there are. Not 100%, but now the regulation is now when you are doing any development, you have to get a clearance from various authorities like drainage department of CMC, whether there are existing underground sewer or water line system going across the property. So if there are existing properties, because earlier it was one large property, now it is being divided. You have to provide some alternative provide paths. Even if there's an electrical system, we have to provide alternative route. So generally, they give a clearance. We have to get a clearance from CMC for underground services.
Okay, now we have Charinder raised his hand.
Yeah.
Charinder, you can ask the question. Charinder, are you there? Maybe I will go to the next question. Meantime, when he prepared by Oshini. So she asked, I think it's Oshini. What advice can you give to the final year undergraduates who are about to graduate? Because amidst the COVID pandemic, the country is affected. Yes, due to the COVID. So, what is, I think, the question that she's trying to ask is, what is your advice for students who are graduating at a time like this?
Yeah. No, we have to face various. So I think best thing now after graduation or even before graduation, the internet facilities are available. Please go through the internet and see what is happening in this country and other countries. What are the construction? If you are a civil engineer, what are the major construction, major projects happening? And you can actually, if you are not decided, you are going to be a construction engineer or design engineer or any other, you can do a little study survey and see where the job opportunities are available. No, because you have to understand the current situation and where the opportunities are available is something that you have to study. So I think that is what you can do. And then there are certain jobs like, design offices can run without any problems. Now, even in fact, I'm running my office without any problem working from home. But when it comes to construction, you have to wait till the problem is solved. But I think as an undergraduate student, the best thing you better study, get some idea about the construction industry in this country.
Okay, I think that answers question. And we have another question by Prasant Jeevaratnam. So his question is, I think he asked, I will direct to you, he asked whether you use the king post as a steel column or you will use concrete column for the structure. I think he asked, is a king post going to be used as a structural element or you are going to remove it?
Yeah, actually, if you see the steel section book, you get king post and queen post. Those are actually by welding two edge sections. But now that is what is called king post. There's a standard section called king post in steel sections. Like you get I beams, you get H beams. If you weld like a cross two H beams, you are getting king post. But what we did was we fabricated the steel column using steel plates, and we designed a king post with steel plates because standard sections can't take this load. This is a steel section.
So I think he asked whether that you keep it or you remove it. As you said, you are going to remove it. I think
we are going to remove it. We have to later remove.
Yeah.
All the temporary support systems has to be removed.
Okay, I think that answers his question. Is there any other questions? And we can have another maximum 2 to 3 minutes.
Yeah.
So meantime, I would like to ask, what do you think? What will happen to this country during coming months? Because our students, mainly, I'm concerned about our final year students. They are about to graduate now. So maybe after a few months' time, they will be in the industry.
Yeah.
So they have to work under this the condition. The sites, the construction sites are very dangerous place to be. As you know, there are construction difficulties, dangers due to the construction, and now we have this COVID. So what do you think our industry will continue to grow, or we will have a kind of hold?
No, the construction industry will immediately, even they are to start even tomorrow if the permission is given. Now the permission is given because the after following all the precautions, we have to work. The construction has to happen. Construction means not only construction, it is the bread and butter of a lot of people, even from the person who is the mason to labor, everyone is living from the construction. So construction industry has to happen the moment the permission is given, and you have to follow. Now we have already established the safety procedures, and we have to work that way. And I request all our young graduates to be in touch with the industry. To be in touch with the industry, you can do through the Society of Structural Engineers. Actually, we have various platform. Also, the PIFA Colombo chapter is also going to create certain platforms to address all our graduates. So, be in touch with us, and the Civil Engineering Society. In fact, the committee has decided to work very closely with the Civil Engineering Society of all the universities. We are going to meet you very soon. If it is not permitted, maybe we can work on a similar platform, virtual platforms. We are like to share our knowledge, experience, and also the job opportunities. So
Thank you.
we will support young graduates to find jobs through both these institutions, that is the Society of Structural Engineers Sri Lanka and the PIFA Colombo chapter.
Yeah, I have several questions again. Mr. Jonathan, so he asked, so the diaphragm walls, the seepage is not a big issue, but in other retaining structures like the cofferdams, yeah, his question is related to cofferdams. How can we seal the seepage flow in cofferdam structures?
Cofferdam, I think that generally you have to have a separate hard core. You use actually different techniques. You use clay blankets, then some sheet piles to control seepage. It depends on the location.
Okay.
Sheet piles are the ideal.
Yeah, and we have another question. So we have diaphragm wall installed until the rock level or socketing depth.
No, diaphragm wall is, you saw the cam shell, you saw in the video clip the cam shell. Cam shell can take the soil, even the in SPT value about 50, it can take. So that is mean the weathered rock, and you can't excavate the hard rock. But in actually we don't have facility, but in other countries they have cutter pump. So after going up the rock level, you have cutters. So cutters will cut the rock. You can even socket it actually. The diaphragm can be socketed. So only thing, we don't have cutter pumps and the cutter wheels. Otherwise, that is not difficult.
Okay, right. Thank you. I think we have a, I think, final question. It's by HS. See, he asked similar to what I have asked, but I will repeat the question. He asked, with you use chemical anchoring to the to connect the diaphragm wall with the slab. No, you said now there is a gap.
No, yeah, we have a gap and we have an independent board. But you can do that in certain places. They use you design the diaphragm wall to take the weight of the slab as well. Either you can insert the bars. You can have the bars inside which you can take it at different levels. Yes. But the level perfectly having at that level is difficult. So most of the cases you go for chemical anchoring.
Yes. So now in your project, you said you have a diaphragm wall and there is another there is a gap between the structure and the diaphragm wall. Then, but now once you remove this, you know, this what you call the bracings,
Yeah.
you have to transfer the load. That load to somewhere. So there is some mechanism to transfer the load from.
There is no gap actually. There is no gap. We are casting the wall, skin wall against the diaphragm wall.
Okay.
Only the waterproofing layer thickness, that is about 4 millimeter, is the gap. So.
Right. Okay. Right. And we have another question. I'm sorry. Maybe since online platform we can take questions.
Yeah.
So I will be available this video through maybe our platforms, Facebook. You can go through this presentation again and again. Maybe we will try to make this available through YouTube. The question by Sasi: how do you ensure each separately reinforced diaphragm wall act as one long wall at the end of the construction? So,
Yeah, diaphragm wall actually we are designed like a one-way slab.
right, I think that
So it is, yeah, it's like a
word
one-way
will
slab.
answer.
Yeah.
Is there any more question? We can take one, I think, last question. Time is almost
4:30. Yeah, yeah.
Yes. I think it's the best time to let go Nandana Abesurya. I think it was a very nice day. We had a very good time, and we got a lot of knowledge through the presentation. You can see he's a knowledge bank. So I think we will have more events to extract his knowledge. So without taking much time, I would like to thank everybody for joining today. I hope everybody has learned a lot through his experience. So thank you, Engineer Nandana Abesurya, for accepting our invitation and delivering this online talk. So I would like to now invite our Junior Vice President, Mr. Ravindu Hewavitarana, to give the vote of thanks. Ravindu?
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, yes.
Yeah, so good evening, everyone. So I think this is the end of another successful talk session of Talk Series 2020 organized by Civil Engineering Society. And this is our first online talk session. And it was a very informative and interesting talk about design and construction of deep basement for Del Mall at Ward Place. So without getting too much time, on behalf of the Civil Engineering Society, I would like to express my gratitude to Engineer Nandana Abesurya, Managing Director of NCD Consultant Private Limited and President of Society of Structural Engineers Sri Lanka, for sharing his valuable knowledge and experiences with us about this project. And next, I would like to thank Dr. Uday Disanayaka, Head of the Department. Always his guidance was helpful to us. And also I would like to thank Dr. Samit Buddhika, the President of the Civil Engineering Society, and all the committee members for giving support to organize this event. And I would like to thank all the staff members, industry people, and other undergraduates who are here to making this event a success. So I hope you will join with us in future events. So thank you very much to all of you. Have a nice day.
Okay. Thank you very much, the Civil Engineering Society and the President and the members for organizing this wonderful event, and also the Dr. Uday Disanayaka, Dr. Samita, and Dr. Jalathir Singh, and all your civil engineering team. And I would like to inform you that the Peradeniya PIFA Colombo chapter is also planning to arrange industry professionals to share their knowledge with our students. So keep that also in mind, and thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you very much. So I'm going to end the meeting. Thank you.